today is also a good day because we have school dinner. And therefore, we have a talk from Dream to Reality by Deshpande and now director.
Okay, thank you. I'm very sorry. This is my first day at this school. I normally try to not do that. Or after all, our school, we host it here. And it's almost the end of the school in terms of the second week, or middle of the second week. But let me just welcome you anyway to the center, which is really meant for supporting young people like you, early career scientists who want to get involved with QCD, and eventually you will be running this collider and taking the maximum benefit from the data, even if you're experimentalist here, whatever. So this is really a machine for you. What I do give in this lecture is a big picture historical overview of the science development and the project development, how the EIC evolved from its early beginnings. What was the early need that was necessary that people perceived at the time, and how it evolved into the project. So there are lots of lessons that we have learned as we through, sometimes in the hard way, sometimes happily. Some fortuitous events happen which are positive. And I will just simply give you that. But woven into that are various messages of the science, the limitations, how do you make proposals, how do you ask for extra things, how do you ask what the limitation of current day experimental or theoretical idea is, and where you cross it over. And you will hopefully see it, and I'll try to influence it. But feel free to stop me anytime, because this is not going to be a technically driven lecture. It is a historical lecture. But the things that you will see in that, you will have seen in other lectures that are being built around this. So if you look at talks by other theorists or experimentalists, you will see the origins of those thoughts, those ideas in this lecture, and hopefully that will be beneficial to you. So over the last 27 years, this is a first workshop that we organized. Has Raju Venugopalan been here so far? No. So Raju and myself organized here at Brookhaven, December 3rd, 4th, 1999, the first meeting in which we discussed the possibility of having electron-proton, electron-nucleus collider. And at lunch, I will tell you more stories about this. That was immediately followed by another workshop, which was just about a few months later in April at Yale, where I was a postdoc at that time. You see, it was a circular machine. Yes, it was based on RIC, the relativistic heavy ion collider, and it had an extra injector. So if you look at the RIC, which is shown here, you see that there is injectors complex here, which exists even today. We still operate it, and we will still operate it in the EIC era. And then the beam comes out and bunches come out and go into these two directions. And this is that symbolically that is shown here. And what we needed was an extra electron injector. Between 2000 to 2008, the idea changed into a LINAC, a big LINAC, half a kilometer long, that would accelerate the beam to 10 GeV and then inject it and have a circular ring here with the one collision point. Then it evolved because of the fact that this area was a zone in which some rare birds come to inhabit. So you cannot have any construction, which was a shock to us after doing the early engineering designs. So then the design moved to a different kind, different location. We couldn't do much here, construction here. That's why we moved here. But it was a LINAC ring design. If you had the idea of the Jefferson Lab, you might have heard about Jefferson Lab. You saw some talks about this. Yes, not yet? Okay, you should. So you can see that there are two LINACs, and you accelerate them, pass them multiple times, and accelerate the beam to to whatever energy you want, and then you have a collision here. That by 2016 to 24 evolved back into a ring-ring design. Yes. These are major changes that happened, but oscillated between ring-ring and Linac ring for technical reasons that we can discuss, but it moved. And the most recent one is shown here. In this case, the electron bunch is injected, the hadron beams are in here, yes, and then it collides with one of the rings. And there are two different experimental areas which still exist. The hadron beams are still here, but you see the injector beam has come out here now. So the project changes because people realize that technology or physical limitations and the designs change. But the design change means to come up with the final design, to collide in any new design, it takes about 2 years. You think about something, you have a problem, you try to solve it. So each one of them could be 2 years. Yeah. The parameters of the physics are also different. This one was at that time, 20 years ago, was the most ambitious one. You saw the talk today in the accelerator part. You saw that the luminosity that we are aiming for is 10 to the power 34 per centimeter square per second. The highest luminosity we are thinking about here was about 100 times lower. Yes, if the luminosity is 100 times lower, the physics that you can do with it also gets changed. So you probably had a talk about transverse momentum distributions, 3D imaging of the proton, what's called imaging science of the electron-ion collider, that requires the highest luminosity. That was never mentioned as a requirement in any of the things that we wrote in this part of the timeline, because we didn't know that you could reach it, because the luminosities were low. But it was more importantly, even the concepts of imaging, the TMDs and the GPDs, they were not developed enough. The theory had not developed enough. So over time that developed, the machine developed, and we are at a place where now people ask us, was it too late? And I honestly feel it is not too late. Because had we been successful in building this in 2007-8, and I'll show you some slides from that time, which we thought would be realistic, we would have missed a lot of science that now you will be able to do, because it didn't happen at that time. And it didn't happen not because we didn't try, it didn't happen because we didn't get the global support that we needed. And we didn't get the global support we needed because we couldn't convince all the people that we need to realize this project. And we couldn't get all the people because it was not a strong enough case. But looking back now, I feel fortunate that we did the right thing and waited and got all the people together. And that takes time. Yes. So that's a lesson that I have learned. We have learned, some of us who have been in this project for a long time. But this is something that I give you on the plate. Expect this. Each rejection is not the final thing. Persistence is important, but at the same time, see the limitations and see why it didn't work. Yeah. So I will go through this. Here are various papers that have been written, and I will emphasize that over time, starting from about 2002 all the way to 2023. These are various reports that came out and were reviewed, and I'll talk about them as needed. So this is not a science talk, but science is embedded in it because science has driven the project, so I don't know how to separate it. But it's a historical talk about how EIC developed to give you a perspective where we come from and where we're going. Yeah. So if you go back in about 2000, late 1990s, here were the scientists involved in the study of nucleon spin, nucleon structure in different parts of the world, different laboratories around the world, at different energies, different techniques, different tools, yes, but they were distributed. So what was going on in France? There is the Grenoble, the GSI in Germany, Darmstadt, the DAISY laboratory in Germany, in Hamburg. They were all looking at nuclear structure or nucleon structure. Remember, late 1990s, this is before QCD was accepted fully as the theory of strong interactions. Remember, the Nobel Prize for QCD was 2004, right? So we knew it worked in the 1990s, but there were lots of open ends there. We didn't understand why alpha S, the strong interaction constant, moves, changes as a function of scale at which we look at. It was very different than the electromagnetic alpha. Yeah. So all of these things remained. It took some time for us to realize on the west side, on this side here, the ideas about nucleon spin or nucleon structure were being explored at the Jefferson lab, which still exists. At that time, it was a much smaller energy machine, 3 GeV, 6 GeV, that's starting. IUCF, the Indiana University cyclotron facility, they were looking more at developing ideas about how to deal with beams, more of an accelerator side. But they were doing experiments locally as well. We had started thinking about Electron-Ion collider at Brookhaven. I'll mention that. And MIT Bates had an electron machine which was coming to its exhausting range of possibilities. So they were looking for something else to do. IUCF was also looking for something else to do. They had proton and deuteron beams, or low energy, and they wanted to do something beyond what they had done in the past. And the concept was that MIT would add a hadron ring like IUCF and have an electron-proton collisions at 3 GeV, center of mass energy, 2 GeV. IUCF wanted instead to bring the MIT ring to Indiana and do the same physics. They were scientifically, collectively together. We were talking about a much larger energy because we had RIC, 100 GeV or 250 GeV proton beam. And Jefferson Lab had just started fixed target. And I'll talk to you about a little bit about they moved into a collider proposal, which was part of the EIC history. The point of this slide is that the ideas to understand nucleon structure were getting accumulated from all parts for different reasons. Everyone had different reasons for it. Either you had a technology or the collider with you, or you had questions about the science. And they were different. They're not necessarily the same questions, but they were different questions. But it all took all of that finally to come up together with the final proposals that we have. What we knew at that time was from the EMC experiment at CERN, the European Muon Collaboration. If you've never heard it, that's one of the places where all of the science we talk today literally began, literally. That was the place where we realized that the proton sitting inside the nucleus is different than a free proton. If you looked inside the proton and looked at the parton distribution functions, everyone knows now what they are, right? They are different if you put the proton in a nucleus or a neutron in a nucleus compared to a free proton or a free neutron. We don't quite understand all aspects of it, but it is part of our study that we want to do it in the future. But that was discovered there in the late 1980s. It was also discovered that the quarks, which everyone expected to carry all the spin of the proton, that was a surprise as well. So it's called the spin crisis. You probably heard about it in the introduction, but George Sturman normally talks about that. So the fact that spin is not something that you can explain based on quark interactions and alignments, spin of the proton, was discovered also by EMC. Yeah, and the method used was identically same. You use polarized muons. They were doing polarized leptons, muons in this case, and hitting them with polarized targets, proton targets. And then you look at the asymmetry and look at the difference between when the proton and the muon and the proton are aligned and misaligned. So that's the standard method that every experiment does, whether you do it with RIC, with proton-proton, or electron beam scattering at Jefferson Lab with electron-proton, or muon-proton as they did, and in the future, electron-proton, electron-neutron, that we will do at the Electron-Ion collider. Yeah, it's the basic fundamental method that we use in this. So the history I've spoken about, there were various proposals to go beyond. I already mentioned here, the Hera machine existed. There was a possibility of polarizing the proton beam, and that was led by certain people. We wanted to do polarized EP scattering. And I'll mention to you later, there was another group that was working on the electron nucleus scattering. There was McLaren, Venugopalan, Strickman. They said, you've studied the surprises in the proton structure. You've seen that the gluon distribution rises at low X. Everyone knows what we're talking about, right? The F2 structure function and the gluon distribution function rises at low X. That was discovered there. It was completely unexpected at that point. Yeah. And that had created the desire to go even higher to see what happens to this proton. But to go there, it means that you have to go to even higher energies in EP scattering to go to the lower value of X. And that was more expensive. So people said, oh, why don't you put the nucleus? Because nuclei have a large number of protons. Now you'll get a collective effect. Yes? And that's what people wanted to do at Hera. And so there was a group was planning to do that. And some of us were looking for doing this with polarized protons to do the same physics with spin and look at very, very low X to see where the spin, the remaining spin of the proton was coming from. Yeah. Then the GSI, they said, oh, yeah, we'll do the same thing. However, there were efforts to do this. They were looking at what they could do. To build a collider with 800 GeV proton is a big deal. But to do it at a smaller energy was not. And in the collider mode, if you go to 30 GeV and 40 GeV, you could explore beyond what was available at that time in the fixed target. So there was an effort at that point. I already talked about Indiana University and MIT Bates coming together. And then there was the proposal that we started working on in 2000s for electron proton and electron nucleus. The advantage at Brookhaven was that we had the beams together. So you could build one interaction region and you could circulate proton beam that would satisfy this group here. And then you could have the nuclear beam and that satisfy this other group there. So for political realities at DAISY, and I'll mention them a little later to you, we didn't succeed in this part. So we had to leave that effort. We worked for 3-4 years and we left. But then this one was the natural place where we could come together. In the top proposal, we could either do protons or we do nuclei. So we had to fight with each other. In this case, the beam provided was, you tell me what you want today, I'll switch to protons. If tomorrow evening you want nuclei, I switch to nuclei. So it brought scientists together, not just the theorists, but experimentalists. Yes, you could do the same thing. And so on and so forth. So we learned that way. The strength in unity brought all those people who were unsuccessful in various other excellent proposals, came together because it was a natural place. The accelerator provided us the possibility of bringing all together. Unity, the strength in unity was really, really critical here. So what was the motivation? You've probably seen this, and I'm going to very quickly go through this. You have a deep inelastic scattering, a virtual photon is being exchanged with a proton, and what you're going to measure is the scattered energy and the scattered angle of the incoming electron. You know very precisely the energy of and the angle of the incoming electron. You know precisely the incoming proton energy and angle, because they are sort of coming this way, yes? And then you can calculate all of these things. The Q squared is the momentum exchanged by this virtual particle. That is a measure of resolution. Yes, it's the wavelength of that at extremely high energy would be small. If the wavelength is small, you look inside the proton, as long as the size of the wavelength is sort of smaller than the size of the proton. That's why in lower energy scattering experiments, you don't see the internal structure because you often just bypass it, right? The proton is this size and you use this wavelength, then you most likely will not look inside. But if you use proton size is this, and you use small wavelength, then you have a chance that you will go in and interact with the quarks and rather than whole proton. So that is why it's called the resolution power. And it comes out to be only a function of the initial energy of the electron, the scatter energy of the electron, and the scattering angle. All are experimentally measurable as precisely as your budgets can allow. Okay? The resolution and the energy. You can do that based on your budget. Then you have the inelasticity, y, and you take the 4-vector combination here, but then that can also resolve itself into E prime, the same things that we had before. Again, it's limited by your ability to spend money. Yes, literally. You may not need all the money. Sometimes you don't need all that, but that's where it is. And then you do all other mathematics. The Bjorken X that I'm sure you have been introduced now is a function of q squared by 2pq, and that can also be resolved into these things. Simple things, the angle, scattered angle, the scattered energy, right? So for first principle, first cut, everything you want to know what happened in the interaction, you learned only by looking at the scattered angle and the scattered energy of the electron. And the reason why you could do that, calculate that, is because you knew precisely well the incoming electron energy. That is your probe. That doesn't happen in a proton-proton or a nucleus-nucleus collisions, right? Because when the quark is coming in, we don't know which quark of the proton actually interacted or which gluon of the proton interacted. You have to assume the structure and the associated uncertainties. Whereas here, the machine guy is telling me, here's the electron. It has 22 GeV plus minus 0.2%, and it's coming at 0 angle. That's your definition. That is very important. That's why deep inelastic scattering, this method, has been so successful historically in studying structures, the hadronic structures or the QCD structures, because you know the initial state very, very well. And in no other case can you say that. There's always the uncertainty of not knowing where the exact location of the quark, exact momentum of the quark that is being hit, and you're treating it as a probe to look at the target. Yeah? So that's a lesson that you just need to know it. I assume that, had you thought about this as to why DIS is so much superior in that sense? These are the simple things that generally you need to figure out. Now, you can do better. Over time, you have done very, very well in reconstructing these kinematics in hadron-hadron scattering. It's not that you cannot do it, but it's a lot more complicated. And we can talk about that as a corollary later. But these are the ideas. Now, this is called inclusive by only looking at the scattered electron. But then there are other places where you do semi-inclusive, where you see if you push one of the quarks here, what comes out on this? Yes, side first. That's important. And if you start measuring that and identifying what particle was created, pion, kaon, proton, whatever it was that you pushed out because you pushed the quark out, that tells you what quark was involved, right? Because it is a kaon, then you know that it had to have some component of a strange quark, because the internal structure of the kaon is known, what the quark structure is. If it is a pion, you know pi pluses, pi minus, pi zeros. So you can figure out which quark was hit by looking at what you measured in your detector in this direction here. And then there is something that remains in the target fragment that keeps on going after the proton breaks. Yeah, and if you start measuring that as well, then what is called, it's an exclusive measurement. That means you measure everything that happened in the event. Yeah, so semi-inclusive is better in terms of more ambitious than inclusive, and exclusive is more ambitious than both. Yeah, and the challenges of designing a detector come in this area where it is exclusive, that you want to measure everything. Over time, last 30, 40 years, people have done fixed target experiments or DIS experiments. Now we are getting to a place where we truly want to measure everything. That's why EIC is the 4th generation deep inelastic scattering experiment starting from 1960s. And you better measure all of that, right? Because you want to do better than what it is. Now, if I tell you that the target is solid state, which was the case for most of the targets, and you try to do the same thing, most often those particles that you create either in the semi-inclusive part here or the exclusive part here, the target fragments, they don't come out because they're damped inside the target itself. And this is where an advantage of a collider comes in. In the collider, when I say there is a proton beam, it's really bunched beam. You probably heard that in the previous lecture. So there's a bunch beam. What does it mean? It's not a solid thing that is moving. It's a gas of protons. It's a gas of nuclei. They're very thin. So if you hit one nucleus, these particles that are created, they have a chance of coming out. And that means they have a chance that you can measure it, or we can measure it. We know how to do that. That is another big advantage of a collider, because the bunches are essentially gases. So if you hit it, things can come out. Yes? In a solid state target, it's much more difficult. Yeah. So exclusive measurements generally are more difficult to do in fixed target experiments. Whereas in a collider, you can be clever enough and start measuring. So all of this was learned over last few decades and now being incorporated into what is now considered one of the state-of-the-art or beyond state-of-the-art future experiment and the machine. And I think I've said this already, that here is the fixed target geometry. We have a nuclear fragment, and the pions, the muons, everything, what you're using is coming in one place. In the collider geometry, the nucleus is coming from here, the electron is coming from here, electron scatters differently, nuclear fragments go, and the hadronic fragments go somewhere else. So you can separate it out, you can look at it very carefully. So those are some of the distinct advantages that we discovered as we were starting to promote the idea of a collider as we passed. This is something that I have noticed over last 30 years or so, talking about making the case. It's getting more and more difficult to make a case. Not just because the science has evolved, but I think everything is evolved and it's getting more difficult to get money in general. When I asked one of my mentors as to why did he start thinking about polarized electrons, he said, oh, I thought it was going to be an interesting particle physics tool. Just how do you get polarized electrons? It was not known 60, 70 years ago. He figured it out. And I asked him for a proposal. What did he say? Well, the proposal was 4 lines. And the line said, if we succeed in doing this, it might be an interesting tool. No, I'm not even joking. It's like four lines. You couldn't do that today, right? You couldn't do that, close to that today. But just 30 years ago, this is how we laid out the case for the first EIC that we've talked about. This is a slide from 2002. It says, that crossing the XQ squared. So going to new regimes of X and Q squared, which has not been there, has historically been very successful in teaching us some new things. So we should continue doing it. From fixed target to collider to go such a thing, you know that the XQ squared plane expands, right? You know that? I'll show you some plots, but I assume that you would know by this time that you've seen the XQ squared plots, and you see how fixed target experiment is in one corner and the collider takes you to a different place. I'll show you that. But this is what we were saying here, that every time we cross the Q squared or X boundary, learn something new. And on this side, we said, oh, by the way, the spin is also very interesting. Look how much spin has important to a standard model of physics. As we know, every time we did experiments with spin, we learned something completely different about nature. So to combine this with that is a very, very good idea, in our opinion. It's how we argued in the first case. And that itself was enough in 2000 to take us to the first level. Yeah, those kind of arguments. Here is an example of the explicit thing that I'm talking about. Sorry, this is overcome, but this is X, this is 10 to the minus 5, and behind this is 10 to the, this is 1. This is Q squared, this is 1, 10, 10 to the 100, 1,000, 10,000. We were doing experiments here at CERN in this area, fixed target experiments. And we measured the spin structure of the proton. I guess Sherman had that in his talk, right? G1P. Yes? Everyone remembers? G1P. F2 structure function, sorry? Yes, Yoshitaka, okay. So this is what we had measured. And because of the limitations of our experiment, which ended, the acceptance ended at about 2 times 10 to the 3 here, this was our last data point. And if you also remember from Yoshi's talk, that we were trying to measure the area under that curve, or the integral of G1P. Yes, because at that time we were trying to see how much on the quarks, and G1 tells you something about the quark distributions. So we were trying to measure that. So if I now ignore this part of the figure and we measure up to this point, then we have a problem of extrapolating. At that time, a next to leading order calculation in QCD did not exist. This was before. This curve, the red curve that you see, was first calculated in 1996. And this is about 1995. And here is what we used to take. So since we don't know, let's assume it's flat as we go to lower or lower values of X. Why was it a decent thing? Because Regge theories existed before and they were accepted, experimentally measured things using Regge ideas. So I said, okay, let's take what the extrapolation comes from there is, and this is what the extrapolation is. And then you take X times, so X area under this curve is simply X times this value, right? It's the sum of the area here. But because X is very small, you'll see the contribution that comes from this area is very small. Because X is 10 to the minus 4. You can take a very small number, multiply by that number, you get a small contribution. But the main idea was that how do we measure this? And when the first values of nonlinear evolution or next to leading order calculations came in, when we plotted that, look at this. This is how it looked. That was completely different than that. And then suddenly we had to say, we have to go in that area to see what is the real behavior of the G1P structure function. How do you go to lower values of X and still keep yourself in a respectable Q square where you can do the next to leading order calculations without any problem? That required us to go in that area here. And that is why we first thought about going to a collider. And that was the Hera limit that I'm showing there. And that's why people said, okay, after the fixed target experiment, let's go and polarize the proton at Hera. That's why a lot of us went to Hera at that time. And we had workshops, and this particular curve that made the case for low X measurement then became the head, sort of the front piece of that science case for this. And this was the workshop, and some of us even joined the collaboration because it could be done. We had the collider, we had the detector. Only thing that remained was polarize the proton beam. That's how it started. And here is a paper that we wrote. Some of our authors are in the audience here. So this is that curve. This is the original curve. If you multiply this by X, you get this contribution right here. And if you multiply this by X, you get this part here. Yes? Obvious? So, but now that means that this, whether you take this extrapolation or that extrapolation, you get very different values of the first moment. And that was the revelation. That was a big deal. It was a small, but significant difference that we had to deal with now. So all our studies with G1P and the integrals of G1P, Ellis-Jaffe sum rule, Bjorken sum rule, all of them changed by having this next to leading order calculation. Yeah, and that was really important to go into the region here where F2 has been measured, where it had seen very significant effects of gluons, scaling violations, low X at Hera. We want to do the same thing with the spin structure function, but we had no data. This plot here, this kinematic limit shown by the red line here, is the same as that one. So we had to go in this region. To go there, we needed a collider. We had to do a Hera-like collider. Yeah. So that was one of the main reasons why we started doing it. Of course, nuclei were also important. And this is what I'm talking about here. This is the nuclear ratio of structure function, F2 structure function of a nucleus. I forget what it was now. I thought I had written it down somewhere, but proton gives you that, or flat. And here are the nuclear PDFs that I mentioned to you before, where they said the nucleon sitting inside the nucleus looks very different. It's not the same. The parton distribution function is different. And that is reflected by this ratio. And we estimated, or people like Bjorkane, they estimated that we could measure with very, very high accuracy if you replace the proton beam in HERA with the nucleus. But the directors told us, you either get the polarized protons or you get the nuclei. You won't get both. So you decide. That means we fought, right? So we fought means we were weaker. So McLaren, Mueller, and some others, Mark Strickman, they said, oh, well, let's go to a big guy in the field, Bjorkane. Let's see what he sees. And he wrote this beautiful letter. And if you look at these two paragraphs, it is the exact definition of the low X physics that we want to do with this color glass condensate saturated nonlinear regime in high energy physics. Has that lecture happened here so far? Yes. This is a beautiful worded. I'll keep this here. You read it. It's explicitly written to measure the nonlinear behavior of gluons, but in the 1996 language. But it's beautifully explained. Just read it. Okay. But why am I telling you this? Is because Bjorkane wrote this very strong letter with nuclei, we felt, oh man, we lost. Bjorkane thinks this is better. But one of our colleagues, a very senior one, Vernon Hughes, who said, let me check with Bjorkane. Does he know that there's also this polarized proton program? And does he know that you can either do this or that? So he called him up and said, hey, by the way, what do you think about measuring the spin structure function in the same low X region? And he said, that's a great idea. Just can you write a letter? And he wrote a letter. So Bjorkane wrote two letters. He didn't know that he could do either one of them and not two. But he basically said, I was not aware that nuclei and protons were exclusive for this option. So he wanted to make clear that both were very interesting. So basically, he's nullified his own letter by writing it. But management was not ready. They didn't want to do this. So we had to give up. They said, we will shut down HERA and move to a completely different physics. Linear collider, they wanted to build it, and they thought that would be built at that time there. So they gave up this nice program, and we had to shut our plans down. And we crossed the little pond between Europe and the US. We came here. We didn't know whether this was going to work. I mean, no, literally, I didn't know at that time. I had thought, where are the polarized protons? I was interested in this proton spin, and RHIC was being built, the relativistic heavy ion collider. And they said, you'll have proton-proton collisions there. You can measure your gluon distributions there. Okay, we'll go there. Without knowing there was an electron ever going to be involved, I didn't think about it at all at that time. But we moved, because I could do the physics, or we could do the physics there, a lot of us moved to RHIC to do the gluon measurement. Yeah, because the quark measurement had happened. We have been known that it was a crisis because quarks don't carry too much spin. Now we had to measure gluons. Protons are full of gluons, and we have a polarized proton facility at RHIC. Why don't we measure it there? That's how we started. So here is what we, and then immediately within a few months of our sort of changing focus, every one of us came to that idea. I said, hey, this only needs one electron beam. It has all the spin, it has the nuclei. In the previous case, we didn't have the polarized beam. We didn't have nuclei. Now we have nuclei and we have polarized beams. All we need is an electron beam. So the whole focus changed and started talking about electron-ion collider. Yeah? And now the energies were different, but the science sort of remained the same. These were the early numbers. of this, the electron-ion collider with different energies. We were exploring where all we can go. So this is where we currently think we can go. This is where Hera was. This would have been the range in which we could have reached. But we said, okay, better than nothing. It's 2 orders of magnitude better than what we have done so far. Let's go. Same thing with luminosity. I mentioned to you, it was 10 to the 33. In the introduction, I said this was the best we could think about at that time. Now we are talking about advances that have pushed this limit to factor 10 more, allows us to do a lot more physics. I think I've said everything. So the scientific frontier opened for EIC with spin structure, the unpolarized quarks and gluon distributions in nuclei with 100 times better resolution, accuracy or statistical accuracy compared to the previous ones. We could start studying correlations between partons because now we had a collider. We could do exclusive, semi-inclusive measurements with control. All that changed the flavor of physics that we could do compared to the fixed target experiments. So though all of that became the case for the EIC. And of course, we started developing the ideas for the detector at that time. Here was the first sort of white paper that we wrote in 2002 that was presented to something called the Nuclear Science Advisory Committee, which advises the US government to go in any particular direction. So they meet every 5 to 7 years. Every one of the nuclear scientists comes there and makes their own proposals. It's what they think is the best science. Then we discuss it amongst all ourselves, and we figure out 2 or 3 highest priority recommendations that the field needs to go immediately in the next 5 to 10 years. And then we identify a few things that come for the first time and say, hey, this is an interesting idea to watch for a later than 10-year timeline. So in 2002, when we submitted this with a very small group of people, about 25 of us, we succeeded in getting a mention in the long-range plan that was produced. And it says electron-ion collider is a new accelerator concept that has been proposed to extend our understanding of the structure of matter in terms of quarks and gluons. So we made it to the first level. It is the first time it was mentioned. It was appreciated that there is something new coming up there that had nothing to do with, it couldn't be done in any other facility, but it was too premature. It was just a concept. So they said, put some R&D money in there, in the accelerator part, in the detector part, and the theorists are working anyway. Yeah. And so this is how it started in about 2002. This was the first proposed publication, which summarized the result. Richard Milner from MIT, Raju Venugopalan for LOX, and Werner Fogelsang, who was at that time Brookhaven, was also involved in the early papers that we wrote. We developed the science over this. Main thing we did at that time was to develop ideas, more new ideas, because the detector expanded, semi-inclusive physics had a bit understood. The TMD, the transversity distributions were taken seriously between that time, now 1995 to 2005. This is where the whole thing developed. GPDs were still new, but we said, if that can be measured, if it has anything to do with the hadron structure, it should be part of it. So that evolved. The collaborations evolved because of that. Theory collaborations evolved, experimental collaborations evolved, measuring ability improved, because new people means new ideas. Yes. So all of that came together, and we started building a group that was almost ready to push for a realization. We tried in 2007, the next long-range plan that came along, and now it's a much stronger statement because we had a better group, we had a better idea, we had a better history now. We knew somewhat what we were talking about. And we recommend allocation of resources to develop the accelerator detector technologies to realize this. By this time, the entire nuclear science community understood that this was going to happen, but we were not ready, or they felt we were not ready. We felt we were ready. We honestly feel we were ready. But when I saw that, I personally was very disappointed. I'm telling you very frankly, I was disappointed, thinking, oh my God, we spent 10 years thinking about this now, and now they're still saying, keep working. Not there yet, right? No, I think for a person of your age, I was just a little older than you at that time, but it was something that was a significant part of my career, right? So all those people, we were feeling there are senior people like Richard Miller at MIT who had a lot more experience. They said, no, this is good. This is fine. Don't worry about it. This is going to go in the right direction eventually. And it has. I think they were right. They had more experience on this. Some ideas of detector developed with large number of people coming in. Again, there was a proposal at Jefferson Lab. This is JLab, light, what was it? Low energy ion collider? JLEIC. So this is JLab EIC, basically. They developed an idea. They have a lot of people there interested in the TMDs, high luminosity, GPDs, exclusive and semi-inclusive physics. And they developed a detector that was good for that physics. If you wanted to do only inclusive physics, the detector would have been very, very simple. But as I told you, the science developed over those 5 to 7 years, and you had to capture that. So the detector that you see today is a very modern detector that uses all the knowledge that we know about these things, imaging, what is needed for it to measure it all. And then there were others that were also, I will not go into that, but just want to give you that there were different concepts coming up. Here is the Brookhaven's concept at that time, and here is the concept that came from Jefferson Lab. And you can see this is the CBAF that exists and is working now. At that time, it was still not working. It was just in the construction phase. But the concept there was to extract the beam and have this bow tie shape interaction collider. Yeah. And they still have 2 interaction regions here. And it was a beautiful concept, I must say. You know, to get polarized beams at high energy is not easy. You accelerate protons, and as you accelerate, they lose their polarization. You start with polarized protons. So somehow you have to come up with the idea to keep them polarized as you accelerate them. And there's a very special magnet that is needed called the Siberian snake magnet. It's any of the accelerator physicists talk to you? Yeah, you know about it, right? So the Siberian snake magnet, a full magnet, what does it do? It takes the proton coming in that direction, and a full snake will turn it by 180 degrees. So by the time it comes down, it will be there. You can then build a partial snake if you want a partial snake or whatever, yeah? But that's the basic idea. Why does it do that? It's because as you accelerate, there are resonances that the proton goes through, and there are 2 types of them. There is one which is intrinsic, which happens when that frequency, Larmor frequency becomes integral multiple of the rotational frequency. At that time, there's intrinsic resonance. But there are others, imperfect resonances, which happen because the magnets are not fully aligned. So those are the ones in which the proton goes through, it gets weird kicks. It can get any this way, that way. And so if it goes through multiple times to the same imperfection resonance, you will get a depolarization eventually, every time it gets kicked this way. But if you put a snake in the middle, then the first time it goes through, it is vertically this way. It goes through that imperfect resonance, and it gets kicked somewhere a little bit. Now it goes through a snake. Now it comes out exactly 180 degrees backwards on the other side. Now it goes through the same snake, the same imperfect resonance, and now it gets the kick in the opposite direction. So on the whole, on average, over hundreds of billions of turns, you keep the polarization. Yes? So that's the. Now think about this design. It's a bow tie. In this case, this is happening very naturally as the proton goes through. It is turning. By definition, geometry makes it turn. You don't need a Siberian snake. The entire ring is a Siberian snake. Yes? That's a beautiful idea. Beautiful idea. It would have worked, I think, if we had gone this way. The problem was the size of the lab is such that you couldn't go to the highest energies that the scientists wanted overall. The nuclear program could not have been done, which needs the highest energy to go to the lowest X to have the saturation physics done. Yeah. So I think that was one of the things that was just there. And the cost of the RIC was already there. I mean, the RIC existed already. So we had to build an electron beam, which was like building this, whereas they had to build the RIC, which was a bigger deal. Eventually, the communities came together again. Unity, strength in unity, right? It came back. We are now at Brookhaven building the EIC. That science that I mentioned to you was in this white paper. I will not go through. I think you probably have seen these plots before. It's the quark spin versus the gluon spin. In this equation that we are looking off for, where is the nucleon spin coming from? The quark spin coming here. The gluon spin is here. And the orbital motion that relates to the transverse motion and the transverse position of the quarks and gluons is identified there. And if you measure it very precisely, this at the time was the total uncertainty in the gluon spin versus the quark spin. The reduction that we were expecting are sort of shown in that with those reduced. The concept of saturation, again, you want to go to see how the gluon distribution looks like at extremely low X, but this is going straightforward up. We had not seen anything else. The only way to do this is to either build a much larger collider, as I mentioned to you earlier on, beyond Hera, or you replace protons with nuclei and try to get oomph that you get because of that. And what we are trying to see is to see if there is any regime of saturation in which the gluon emission occurrences are equalized by the gluon recombination inside the proton. If they are becoming equal at some value of the saturation scale, that's where the saturation scale is reached. That means that the shape of your gluon distribution will change. So replace protons with nuclei as best as you can, the heaviest one, and see if we can see that, right? And that's the reason why we wanted to get to the nuclei. So those 2 or 3 things that were summarized in this white paper, that came out of a workshop at INT in Seattle. There is a workshop going on now, actually speak. You can go to their webpage and see 20 years later, 16 years later, they're now looking at other things that you can do with the EIC beyond what we have so far studied, or making it more sophisticated. But then these became the pillars of the science of the EIC. And as promised, the machine allows us to go into regimes that we have never seen before. Low X and high Q squared. High Q squared much higher, but even in this area, we can go, there are no data with polarized protons, a similar plot for nuclei as shown here. So you can, in both electron-proton and electron-nucleus scattering, we're exploring new regimes. This is a plot of the center of mass energy versus luminosity. I think this you also might have seen before in any of the talks. But basically, it tells you that as you start the program, even if you don't reach the highest luminosity, you start doing physics as long as you have the center of mass energy reach. Yeah. So the saturation regime requires the highest center of mass energy, but it doesn't seem to require, at least for certain of its signals, very large luminosity. The spin structure function and the flavor structure, because you're asking for not just the scattered electron, but in addition, something else in hadrons, and you measure that. So you need to look at this data split into that. You start needing more data. And that's why luminosity has to be higher to get the physics in the same time. And the last but not the least is the transverse motion in the GPDs that allows you to go into the imaging part of the science. Here in 2015, so we went back to the plot again, and this was a nice picture that that was taken by Don Giesemann, the chair of the EIC. We were drafting the recommendation, and he said that we were praying. In fact, we looked like we were praying to get the support of the people that were there. Anyway, this is how the luminosity final recommendation came in. We recommend a high luminosity, high intensity polarized electron-ion collider as the highest priority for facility beyond after we finish the construction of FRIB, which was under construction at that time at MSU. You know that there is a facility for isotope, beams, radioactive isotope beams. So this is something that was being constructed. They said, as soon as that gets over, that construction finishes, let's build the electron-ion collider. So from 2002 to 2015 is the path where NSAC, the Nuclear Science Advisory Committee, took to make that recommendation, which is not unusual. If you look at any large project, it's about 3 long-range plans is what it takes. That's something that is just there. I just was not aware of it going into the first one, neither in the second one, but third time, it was fine. And of course, it made a lot of news, as you can go back and see that the new collider will be built. Of course, when that happens, DOE doesn't immediately say, okay, then build it. No. They go to an independent body to say, tell us, is it worth building? And they go to the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. This was done in 2017, 2018. The National Academy, wrote a report of their finding. They said the science is compelling, fundamental, and timely. Timely, compelling, fundamental, you understand, but timely was also important because they looked at the readiness of the detector technology, the readiness of the accelerator technology, and they said, if this is built, can the results be interpreted in the same theory? That was also important. So theory was also ready to take data and make make coherent statements about what we learned, because you need all 3 of them to make a success. So this is this was very important. This happened in 2019 or 18, and that's when, and then 2 years later, Brookhaven was formally selected. There was a process of selection there too, presentations from Jefferson Lab and Brookhaven to make sure that we made the best case possible. And that's when we, the result was we built it at Brookhaven, or we built it in collaboration, so a partnership with Jefferson Lab and Brookhaven. So now, what we are building now is a complete partnership between Jefferson Lab and Brookhaven. So some of the best ideas of Jefferson Lab, the electron beam, have been incorporated into the design that has helped us make the machine better. The best ideas of the 2 groups of experimental scientists that came out, they have been incorporated into the EPIC detector design and also the Hadron side. Yes. So it really becomes a global project with a lot of international side. You probably saw this today. This part already exists, except that the red ring, the yellow ring exists, the infrastructure or injector plot complex exists. What we now have to build is this electron beam, the source, and then this line here, the red beam line inside the tunnel. And here is the part which EPIC detector, you probably heard about that too, but if not, I'll introduce you to that. And then there is a place for a second interaction region that is kept that says nothing you do in the ring should negate the possibility of a future second detector. So the EIC project, as we call it today, has the machine parts, this part, and this detector. That has been costed, and that is what the US government and the international community hopes to support. The second detector is not part of the project. It is something for you or some of you to think about in the future. Yeah. For detector, there were 3 proposals. The TINA detector proposal, there's a Core and HA. HA was based on an existing detector collaboration, S-Phoenix. Took the magnet from there, trying to save. What come up? What can we do with existing detectors? And they started with that. This was a proposal for a very condensed, very short, small detector to use the state-of-the-art or even beyond compact detector, as they call it, compact detector for EIC. And this was a more greenfield detector idea. We wanted to explore what can be built without the bias of an experimental constraints. So those 3 were proposed. Again, we competed, but immediately after that, we came together. The proposal was that you start with the HA detector, take the ideas from there, combine these 2 concepts into what we now know is the EPIC detector. So what we call today EPIC is a combination of the HA and the TINA with concepts that are, and people who have also been part of the Core, which was a very small collaboration, and people thought it was not ready to go forward. Those people are also joined. So there is now 1 detector collaboration which combines all the effort that was started there. We hope to start a new one in the near future. So here is what the EPIC detector looks like. Any collider detector or any detector starts with the inner tracker, which is extremely thin. This is where you want to know the tracks are coming out from the collision point, but we don't want to disturb them. That means those inner detectors have to be extremely thin, no energy loss going through them, but we now need to know very precisely what the position of those tracks were, because you want to reconstruct in the vortexes. So typically the innermost tracking is very, very light. Then you hit the particle identification experimental parts, which are multiple and different. They're different and many, just because not every one of them is effective in every momentum range. So based on what momentum ranges, we know what technologies work. So you have to design that into your original concept. And that's what is happening with 2 or 3 types of particle identification. And once you're done with particle ID and track, you want to contain it. You want to measure its energy. That means you have to stop it, right? So the electromagnetic part comes first. It gets stopped by the electromagnetic calorimetry. The hadronic part interacts a little bit there. You can see the showers, but then the electromagnetic part being gone and completely suppressed by the electromagnetic calorimeter and measured, hadronic part continues, and that's why you need something outside. Yeah, so that's a typical design philosophy for any high energy physics experiment. You look at any design anywhere around the world, you'll see that, because that's the basic need. Identify tracks, artify particles, then stop it. Yes, these are the 3 steps for tracking, particle ID, and calorimetry. I will not go through, but this is a slightly more detailed design of the detector. Again, different parts of the tracking particle ID are shown in different colors, and this is how it will be set in the interaction region. Let me go forward. I think I'm running out of time, right? Or
flexible.
You're flexible? I'm almost there. You saw remember the first plot I showed you, the old designs, and people were thinking on both sides of the Atlantic. They were trying to solve some problems. We were trying to see how to go to low X. There were people who were trying to see, how do I get semi-inclusive physics going? There were people who were already thinking about exclusive measurements, target fragments. All of us came together to build what now is the EPIC and the EIC collider detector. So people were stuck with their own problems in hadron physics. And they realized that coming to such a facility where you can do all of it together has a value. And this is why you see people from all over the world to solve these QCD problems come to EIC. There is no other machine in the world, apparatus in the world, which you can get so many answers in one place. Literally, there is no other place even being thought about, because you want the best technique. This is the best technique. I told you, this is the tool. This is a classic tool, understood, very well understood tool. Detectors design, how do we do this, is known. And initial investment to get to this level, to go into a new regime of X and Q squared and do this at a high level of accuracy, with the versatility of the EIC that we have, the machine that we have, there is nobody else in the world who is even thinking about building one. Yes, and that's why you see a worldwide support. If you are interested in this science, you better come to EIC, right? That's the advantage. As hosts of the EIC, we have a responsibility. That means that we have to be ready to take them, accept them, and react in fast enough speed, because none of them will remain there forever interested, right? Because they have their own needs to produce science. So it goes both ways, but this is what it is. US is about 40% of the collaboration. There is Asia and Europe, which is about 60%. And we are growing as a user group very quickly. We have doubled in size in about 8 years, and we will probably double one more time before collisions happen, including, hopefully, a new collider detector, even if it is small. Various collaboration meetings. The next one is coming next week, or no, next month, in July, mid-July, at Jefferson Lab. So if you're interested, look it up. The web page is there. talk to your mentors, whatever school you are in. There is an early career day in the first 2 days too, so you should be able to get something here. New people also means new science. The three things that we mentioned, the nucleon spin that relates to the QCD structure, the imaging, the low-X physics, and the nuclear interaction. Those were the three pillars that I showed you of the science, right? Those were the ones that we could make the case based on. That doesn't mean that they are exclusively the only thing that you measure or that you can do, right? We had to make a case through the United States nuclear science community, NSAC, that this is a good thing to do. So we picked up things that were important to that nuclear science community, and nobody else in the world could do it. But if you build such a versatile collider and versatile detector, of course, you can do a lot more than those three things. It doesn't mean that these are less important. It only means that you had to make a case to the Nuclear Science Advisory Committee and the nuclear science community. We picked the right ones. If you pick the wrong ones there, if they're not interested in that science, then you lose. So that's how you should look at this. Any one of them are extremely important, but we could not have used them to make the case. But look at the versatility of this. You can make precision measurements of unpolarized PDFs, which are critical for understanding not just the highest precise QCD, but mainly physics beyond the standard model at LSC. Because the standard model background has to be subtracted. If the subtracted part is QCD in it, you want to reduce the uncertainty in QCD. This is where we come in. Yeah? We can do very well there. The precision measurement of alpha S, the strong interaction constant. Heavy quarkonium, we can measure them 100 times more in statistical samples compared to Hera. So you look at the uncertainties that came from Hera, and you say, what can we do with 100 times more data in charm and bottom, and with polarization for the first time? Hera didn't have that. Yes, there are some beautiful things you can do there. And the list goes on. Jet physics has evolved over the last 15 years, 10 years, when LSC came in. We have never seen jets evolve. In this collider, you can turn on and off the whole jet because we are running the center of mass energy to low. Then you start seeing 2 or 3 tracks. That's not a jet. But you turn the energy on and you evolve into a structure of jet. There are lots of knobs and variables in there. You can do this with protons. You can do this with nuclei. You can see the jet passing through the nucleus. And you can see the jet passing through a carbon nucleus with a very little QCD interaction, or you can put it in a nucleus which is much, much larger, and suddenly, like uranium. So a jet producing uranium sees a lot of nuclear material before it passes through. So you can control this. That has never happened. Yes? So that's why the versatility of this collider is important. Huge structure, international structure is set up. Here is the control, comes from the project management. Jim Yeck is the director of this project. There is a science advising group that comes in, the collaboration council, EPIC collaboration, the user group steering committee, the accelerator group science, all of that then feeds into this. There are advisory committees to the project, experienced people, how to run large projects. By the way, everyone knows how much approximately EIC is going to cost us? No? Any guess? No, you're biased. You're too close here. Anyone else? Make a guess. No?
5 billion.
5 billion. Oh, I like that. You're also informed? No? No idea? Oh, I'm going to give it, sorry? 100 billion. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a big discount. We need only 3 billion. Only 3. Oh, 100. Then she's asking for 100. I'm doing much better. Anyway, such a thing. You have lots of proposals. You have lots of reviews. In fact, last year, this group and all these people who sit here. By the way, Chris Mota gave a talk today, right? He's the leader of one of the electron storage rings. So so all of these people that you see, each one of them is a responsibility in the project. right? So he is one of the biggest ones because the electron beam sits outside. Now the construction is outside and they inject. So all of that is under his control. Yeah. So but we are doing well. We're getting enough support. So the New York State, for example, had told us that if we get the EIC at Brookhaven National Lab, New York State would invest $100 million towards all the infrastructure that is needed to be upgraded and built at the EIC. So all the new buildings that are needed, they came through. The EIC accelerator collaboration, there are lots of things. You probably saw that. The things that Christopher Montag mentioned are only part of it, but there's a lot of things to be fine-tuned to realize the collisions on the accelerator side. And some detailed problems are unsolved, although on the whole, 70–80% of we know how to do it. To realize it engineering-wise and actually do this to 100% takes effort. That is of interest to worldwide accelerator community. And that's why about 180 of the accelerator scientists from all over the world are now part of the EIC collaboration, accelerator collaboration. And they're working with our host group to realize the problems, because at some point they expect the same problems will be solved for an upgrade of the LHC or the future accelerator machines. Yeah. So this is a worldwide community. We learn from each other, not only on the detector and the theory side, but also the accelerator side. UK has been in the forefront. They have already approved about $75 million. And we keep on meeting in a very high-level funding agency meeting. This is a group of funding agencies from all over the world who are part of the EIC, where scientists from those countries are interested in joining. So we meet with them every year twice. And this is how, this is one of the ones that we met about 2 weeks ago. In fact, that was why I missed the beginning of this workshop in the first week. So this is a picture that we took in Prague. I want to finish with those concepts. I showed you the history of it. I showed you the earliest of the plots in the late 1990s to 2000s. All these proposals that were built, and these are some of the most recent ones. It takes time. It takes persistence, but never give up. That's the part. It takes time in particle nuclear physics when project is this large. Find yourself something to do now, but keep thinking about the future, right? That's the idea. That's what most of us have been doing in some of the gray-haired people that you see in this room, is that always keep that. Don't get discouraged just by the time. If the science is good and if that's what is motivating you, don't give up. It's probably worth it. And this has lasted, right? Nobody can do this science, I emphasize that, for a reason. You can be safe in assuming that this is the only place these problems can be solved, which is a good thing because you cannot be overtaken by anyone coming from the left or right field. Yeah, this is the place to be for the EIC. Here is the timeline that we think. We are somewhere here now, in this time here, mid of 25. Construction is expected to begin in about 1.5 years or so. We try to get there. And then it will last for about 8 years. And around 2034 would be the possibility of the first collisions. The first time they will collide beams, it will be entirely to understand the machine. That means they don't want to give you large luminosities on day one. If they make a mistake, you kill your detector, right? You don't want the highest luminosity on day one. You want them to increase their confidence in operating the machine. It took us at RIC about 3 years, 4 years before they reached the luminosities which were at the level of design. Since then, they have gone 50 times over. But it took them 3 to 4 years to understand. Be careful not to burn our detectors, right? Because small mistakes can be destroying. People have done that in other places. So I expect that there will be sort of a 2-year place where there will be experiments done to increase their confidence. And then in return, we get to run detectors and learn about our detector that we'll be building, EPIC detector. Yes. So there will be science that we can do here, but we will not get a dictating idea. Once they are confident, once they are settled, then we say, okay, now we go into operations, which means that they have to do some R&D, but we get to select what do we want this year? What do we want next year? Yeah. So every year we can now follow the program for the EIC. I want to say that being young is a wonderful thing. And I think it's a great thing for you. This is a slide from 2002. And I boldly said the collisions could be in 2011. I still believe that. Only another 8 years. So remember that, it's always 8 years, but it has gone down, right? There was a realistic time, there was 15 years. Now it has come to about 8 years. And people are drawing that Gantt chart of timeline, confidently presenting it to DOE and other funding agencies, which was not the case when I was writing 2011, right? So I thought this is funny. Okay. All right, so that's my last slide. I think the EIC is a high luminosity polarized machine. It will be built in the next decade and will operate for another year, a decade or two. It is going to be a unique machine. There's really nothing that compares and will compare. The physics will be complementary but precise. Complementary to many things that we have done in the past and maybe somebody else will do, but this will be the precise controlled QCD machine. It will have up to 2 hermetic full acceptance complementary detectors. We at the moment have funding for only 1, but there's no reason in the future to be more optimistic. So we will try and get a new detector in. It is going to be an international experimental collaboration. It's already there. There's worldwide acceleration collaboration also. The timeline is aggressive, but we want to follow it as close as possible we can. Highest interest in international partners for both detectors and accelerator, and the second detector might come. And I've said it multiple times in this talk. It is really a machine for you. This is really where it is. 10 years from now, we will be looking at you, looking at the data, right? I think you should be very excited about this possibility. Thank you very much. And I'm going to be around this evening and on Friday. So you can think about questions and comments then. By the way, there's an old collaborator. He's not old as much as.
No, thanks, Samay.
But we were in it together from the beginning. I'm old.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the expected lifetime?
So typically these kind of colliders have a lifetime of about 2 decades, 1.5 to 2 decades. It depends upon what we find, right? If we find this exciting colored glass condensate or, the saturated state of matter, there will be 5-10 years of studies using different nuclei, different energies. Understand that, right? So suddenly you start getting that timeline. If you find something at extremely low X spin, completely unusual compared to what we are assuming, exciting things happen. And I think every time, as I mentioned in the early part, every time we have crossed the border of X and Q squared, we were surprised. And every time there was spin associated with it was very important. And here we have both of them together. So when I say you can make a plan for 10 years to look at all the plots, that we think we will have. We will learn very quickly that we made a mistake. And then you have to adjust the program, adjust the detector acceptance, or build a new one. Detector, right? Not the collider. Collider may be much more difficult. But it's that kind of a thing happen. Hera, as I mentioned to you, the low X rise of the F2 was not expected. But because you saw it in the first 3, 4, 5 years, the program extended very effectively into 10, 12 years from there. Yeah. There was no acceptance in the very forward region, in the very close to the beam pipe, because people thought, oh, it's going to be all the interesting physics is going to be in the central arm. So they built a beautiful central arm from electroweak physics and beyond the standard model. And exciting part came in the very forward region, where they had no detector planned. So now we have planned it based on that experience. Now we're going to get another surprise somewhere that we missed, right? And that could be the design philosophy for the second detector. What did we miss here that we were surprised in the first one? always happens. But I think typically, no matter how you slice it, 15 years is something that any collider that runs has a lifetime.
What's the word I'm looking for? Optimistically, is there for you the idea of having two detectors? Because in the past, I think of Brick and I think LHC. They always have like this two detector idea confirmation.
Yeah,
Of any
It's important, absolutely.
thing. And so is it more of a, given the funding situation and how
Don't
funding?
worry about the funding, make the science case.
That's true. Okay, fair enough.
Turn it
That's a
over.
good point.
Turn
It's-
it over, get a good idea that tell us what we are missing in the epic and cannot be changed beyond this point.
Good point.
That's where you start merging into a new idea, right? So let me just comment on two things. So it's absolutely true. When you find something very, very important, you want an independent confirmation of that, right? This, right now, it is just funding related. But if you find something so exotic and have enough uncertainties and have a better idea as to measure, you make the case for that,
Yeah.
right? So I always like to think about a second detector should have complementary science and yet some important overlap. Complementary detector technologies, because once you have a different detector technology, then the systematic uncertainties can be accommodated differently. So the systematics can be controlled better. It's experience from any of the other detector collaborations, H1 and Zeus, or LHC and CMS, or Phoenix and Star, and you can see that. You can have complementary ideas. People think complementarily in ideas of analysis. Once you start getting confirming results from very different things, it's very important. People increase the confidence in that result. So if you have an exotic result, you better have a complementary there. And the third important thing is complementary people. You can't have the same people doing the same and different things. It's probably sometimes prohibitive for institutions, but if I'm doing this with my biases and my ideas in one, I don't want to go in another one and I'm the same person doing the same thing, right? So I like the idea of C cubed, complementarity in science with a little bit of overlap for confirming important things, complementarity in technology, and complementarity of people. And we have, if you look at the user group, we have about 1,500 to 1,600 people now. Because the detector has about 1,000. So there are 500 people who have not committed so far. And they will commit. Some of them will do the same detector, but some of them might go and come up with a new idea, right? We know some of the people, young people, who are already thinking about a second detector.
So the general idea for this, like, spawned about 25 years ago, right? So are there people now planning on what happens after the EIC is done right now? Is there a
Yeah,
plan?
there are people who are thinking about this, yes.
Do we need like,
We don't need it. If you are interested in a facility and if you are in charge of safeguarding a facility, you will encourage people to come up with ideas. But that necessarily does not mean that that's the right strategy. Each of them, we have a physical limit of the collider, right? So now you can come up with a better magnet that accelerates protons much faster. So you improve on the accelerator technology, and then for the same physical place, you get 10 times more energy. If you can do that, that's a great thing. So invest time in that. You would be encouraged to do that. Right?
do we have a general idea of what new technology will be available in 25 years?
We don't need to know. People are working on better magnets now. Our magnets at RIC are 3.5 Tesla magnets. At the moment, the state of the art is about 16 Tesla, not in the production level, but R&D level. So you can imagine, okay, if you want to really build such a machine, there's R&D to be done at 16 Tesla, but 12 Tesla magnets, you can imagine. LHC++ is thinking about this. So you could ask, what can you do with LHC++ magnets in this? It doesn't mean that it's a cheaper thing. You have to replace the entire ring build a new collider there. Just use so people can think about it. You can think about it. There are people sitting there who are thinking about a second detector now. with new ideas. They're sitting behind there. So I hope you're part of it. Yes. And there are others too. Yeah. It's driven by the need, the scientific need. Why did we go to the higher energy? Because we wanted to go to low X. Energy was not important from our point of view to go to that low X to see if this really the spin structure function goes down, or does the F2 structure function go up again, right? Or saturate. That's where it comes through. That's why you wanted to go to low higher. Then you find the way to do it. And if you can't find the energy and the money to do it, you put nuclei in it. So it's a poor man's idea of doing it, but a beautiful idea. It works, or seems to work.
Excellent. Let's thank Abhay once again. Now you want coffee break, but the only way to earn coffee break is to go outside.
What? I thought you have a photo.
Take a photo and then come back here and get your coffee break.
We'll be at the Mobius strip outside in the courtyard. You may have seen it coming and going, but we recommend you go down these stairs. If you want to find Melissa, I'll find Socorro, make sure. And yeah, so if we all head down there, and then we'll do this quick and come get coffee. So.
How are you? Good. Very good. Very good.
Guys, always.
Very good. Old man. Old man.
Yeah, I tried to divert, but I actually thought.
But David,
Of looking, but the target was slightly off, right?
I just look young.
Let's go.
Probably saving.
So you didn't go to Brookhaven today?
The DAC review is all remote, Benjamin. I think the reality is that some of the committee members.
That was him, right?
Though that was not spoken, but initially it was.
Yeah.
I understand that it happens.
Okay.
Why? Can we? Oh, no, I've heard that they want. Maybe the past. Now, it's very difficult. The capitalism of my. No, the capital declaration. They. They're regulated. So that is financial property. No. There's no. Pen and all.
Thanks.
That's because things like most of the figures, they have to be. Companies. Nowadays, it's expensive to preserve this politics. This has like so billion, like almost $1 billion debt. It's possible to pay, right? But they can manage to hire like big level players like Memphis and this kind of stuff. In the same time, other teams that are trying to balance their finances, not doing this kind of stuff. So for financial different levels. An American is but an American. Yeah. That's the reason that they have a. Exactly. So they just want the libertadores because they hire a lot. Yeah. Money. So this money for players to do on the research. Yeah, because having reflexes in the support. Yeah. Much. Yeah, was good. I forgot my adapter. Dorm, so I there, so it's I was close. Yeah. Os caras estavam na frente que vendeu pra caralho. Esse, ele falou do Inquisitive, foi lá que eu descobri do Inquisitive. Tem dinheiro. Qual, mano? 2023. Mas, qual? Vai ver. Na Boutique. Na Boutique. Aí esse cara, usava o que falei que usava, colou no cara, pegou o cartão dele. Eu não sei o que diferença para todo mundo querer isso. Yeah. That's. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I on. I know that I'll be ready. why you change? What you think about the one? But yeah, that's what I mean. Because let me see if I can find out. Because I was going to tell you. Just one call. That way I can
You always try to chat with them.
Yeah. Breakfast this morning, he came and asked our names.
Yeah, you always said that.
Yeah. You didn't know him from before?
We went to have dinner like a month ago.
Why? Why's
I shoot myself.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And I don't know. I feel like we could talk about anything, and that would be like it's interesting.
Very passionate.
I don't know, but he's really good at telling stories.
Yes.
Like when we were at the dinner, every time he told a story, all the table were like quiet. And it would be like a 5-minute story, but everyone was like so engaged.
Yeah. Well, he promised some stories for New Zealand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's one. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you.
Yeah. Then I have to go.
Yeah. You have to come here.
Yeah.
My understanding is that we are all going together.
I think we're going to the same to an Indian restaurant.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a place where we went last month. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a place where I met. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe it's a good choice.
I think people say that they only go to that place.
It seems fancy.
Yeah.
It seems fancy.
Yeah. I didn't want to go, but
Okay.
yeah. I'm never gonna see you until like who knows,
I mean, we're 3 days, 2 days and a half.
2 days and a half, and then you're back to Italy,
Back to
to
Italy.
Pavia
Yeah. You still have a lesson.
for 1 week.
1 week. Well,
Yeah.
it's a whole week of a lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Use it wisely.
you and Alessio are so different.
I know. I know.
That's cool. Yeah. So Alessio's like very calm, very
Yeah, super polite.
yeah. It's funny because sometimes I'm too irreverent. Like I make like jokes that are not very
Yeah, that's why we get along.
yeah. But then there was one time that I don't know, we were talking about some soup or something. And I said, and I told a joke about like semen or something.
Yeah.
But Alessio, me and Ignacio were laughing, and Alessio just looked at me like, and I was like,
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't say that.
Yeah.
in front of him.
Yeah, it's too pure for this world.
Yeah. No, but that's fine. We need like balance.
No,
Yeah.
I know that. So fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure we have to do something like Friday night.
No, I was telling Alex. Yeah. Like we need to go to a bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, for sure. I'm not
Like,
gonna drink.
exactly. You know what I mean?
I don't drink.
Come on. But on Friday you're gonna drink.
I haven't drank a drop of alcohol in 22 years.
Really? You are
45 years old.
so
Yeah.
from high school.
Yeah. The beginning of high school, basically.
Really?
You didn't know?
But now, now I know.
Now we know.
Ah.
Yeah, you couldn't tell because I'm crazy.
Yeah, because you're always drunk. So
Yeah,
right now I think you're not.
yeah, exactly. No,
But why?
without the stench.
Because you don't like it, or
I didn't like the taste of alcohol. But how should I put it? I have no problem with people drink alcohol. Well, of course, if you drink and
As long as they don't do.
and it's a kind of mess, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't have a problem with that. But I don't like the idea, I guess. And so I decided that I wouldn't do it and wouldn't do it anymore. And I got
So before that, would you get drunk?
well,
I mean, you were young.
yeah, I was young, but I come from a farming family,
Mhm.
and I used to live with my grandparents, which were they were born like during the Second World War. At the time, Italy was very poor, and especially if you are a farmer, and so you drink
So
wine.
they would drink a lot of
Yeah,
alcohol.
yeah. Basically, you drink wine because it's part of your diet. It's calories, right? So I was, I grew up drinking wine at every at every meal, and when I was at the end, I think at the end of school, beginning of high school, I started drinking, along with my peers, alcohol. But I don't know. It's a matter of principle for me, I guess. But I don't like the idea. But I have absolutely no problem with drink. So, but I will come to a bar and I will.
You would have fun.
I will pay an
You
absurd amount
just
of
see
money
it.
for some fruit juice.
You're gonna see all of us like getting wasted, and you're gonna make fun of us.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not gonna be in a better state because I can get there without any need for alcohol.
I don't think so. You're gonna see us all.
I want puke, but
Yeah,
yeah.
no, that's cool. That's cool. That's yeah. You don't need really alcohol to have fun, but
Yeah, I guess it was on principle because there was some kind of peer pressure, to do it, and I've never liked this kind of stuff, so I always do the opposite, I guess. And
you're like, if everyone does it, then I don't want to do it.
well, you have to give me a good reason, otherwise, if you're gonna try to pressure me to doing something and there's not a good reason, it's just because I should do it. That is gonna piss me off, and I'm gonna do just the exact opposite.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah. So you like to be told what to do.
Not when there is no rhyme or reasoning for that, and not why there's the implication that if I don't do it, I will be alone and ostracized and stuff like that. That really pisses me off, and so But I mean, I'm no problem. I go to bars with friends.
Yeah.
So yeah, we should totally do it. Totally.
No, yeah, that's a must. That's a must.
I mean,
Yeah. Do you have to leave early on Saturday?
my flight is at 4 p.m. So
Ah,
I have the morning.
Yeah.
I have the
You
morning.
have all day.
Yeah. I can go to bed late, which by the way, it's
I can make an exception.
I can make, which by the
Usually I sleep at 10 p.m. But
yeah, I will do an exception for you guys, but no need because during this summer school I've always gone to bed like at 1 a.m. So
oh, really? Yeah.
yeah, for one reason or another. It's like in the last couple of days I've slept a little bit more because the weekend was rough. I mean, the weekends were very fun, but waking up Monday morning was rough.
Yeah.
But still,
So what time do you usually go to sleep? Like 10 p.m.?
okay, I between 10:30 and 11:30. But sometimes, I lay down to read or whatever.
Yeah.
Like after the
web already.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, let me see.
Oh, it's on.
Oh, that's us.
I thought that was from last year.
It's good. Both up and down.
Nice. We're famous.
Yeah.
15 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're cooler than last year.
Yeah,
Like you should
I definitely think
next
so,
year.
right? We're the coolest school
Yeah,
from all years.
I mean,
How? Got your meters.
we had enough.
We get some fun.
I put the map and the photo.
Very great.
Compiled also all students, the list of all students. For all. Cross check. Support all the variants. Yeah, so it's fine for you. That's awesome. I'm gonna put these photos in the the Google Drive.
Also. Yeah, I was encouraging, students to upload some stuff, but,
Yeah, I'll upload those.
yep, thanks.
Like it's work for better.
Huh?
It's like very important.
Oh, no, it's for the eye.
Night shift.
Yeah.
Does it help?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I used to, my eyes would get very dry
Oh, okay.
and yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so now I have everything yellow. I mean, yeah, warm. But yeah, I don't know if it really helps, but
It's not.
it's
Windows.
yeah, Windows. Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, like everyone here has a Mac, but
That's from Linux.
yeah.
So drivers. Right. Want to hook up with the
Yeah.
Is, we have the same link for.
Yeah. Same one.
Is tonight's dinner the same, at the same place as last week?
No, it's Curry Club. It's the Indian restaurant, but not just next to it.
Do they accept the wolf fee?
What's that?
Do they accept the wolf fee?
So nice. The centers.
Hey, Alex, do you have the connector that you gave me yesterday?
Right. Stop this thing.
Yes,
Yes. Support. Start recording them.
Yeah, yeah.
Very nice.
Is the same link as yesterday?
It's the same link.
Yes.
They already on.
Picture.
Let me see.
So already after our work hours, we're gonna work like in our project. But yeah.
Even
All right, so as you can see, you're already on the web page, so the photo is there and the map of all participants for this school as well. But tonight we'll have our school dinner. The school dinner will be paid by the center. You don't have to use your cards, but we need to get there. So coordinate how we arrive. So,
Yeah, who has cars that might be able to take some people? One here.
If I have a small car, I can like fit one person.
Okay, all right, and I have some space in mine. Are both of you guys coming round trip or one way? One way here and you're coming back? Okay, and I'm coming back, so, okay, yeah. And there's the 51 bus. Yeah, dinner will be at 6 o'clock. The Curry Club, it's right by the steam room. So we'll see you over there. We're usually on the second floor with a nice view of the harbor. And
Was I? Last ticket, you remember, last week?
Right.
I can use that.
okay.
I don't know if it's